Eric Clapton, the legendary guitarist whose soulful sound defined generations, has finally broken his silence about one of his greatest inspirations, Buddy Holly. For decades, fans have known that Holly's early rock and roll sound helped shape Clapton's career. But what Clapton just revealed about the man behind the music is far more emotional and far more shocking than anyone could have imagined. Clapton's admiration for Buddy Holly was no secret. He often credited Holly's simple yet powerful songs for inspiring him to pick up a guitar in the first place. Yet behind the admiration lies a story filled with regret, lost opportunities, and a confession that Clapton has carried for most of his life. In a recent deeply personal interview, he shared details that shed new light on Holly's influence and the haunting connection he feels to the tragedy that ended Holly's life far too soon. The revelation is not about fame or nostalgia. It's about the fragile thread that ties one generation of artists to another, and the emotional burden of surviving when your idol doesn't. For Clapton, Buddy Holly wasn't just a musical hero. He was a symbol of everything that could have been, and everything that was lost on that fateful day in 1959. What Clapton finally admits now will change how fans see both men forever, uncovering a truth that's as heartbreaking as it is inspiring. Eric Clapton has always been open about the musicians who shaped his sound. Names like B.B. King, Muddy Waters, and Robert Johnson are often mentioned. But long before the blues legends captured his heart, it was a young man from Lubbock, Texas, who first lit that spark. Buddy Holly wasn't just another rock and roll singer to Clapton. He was the reason the guitar became his destiny. In the late 1950s, when Clapton was just a teenager, Buddy Holly's music was everywhere. His songs had a raw energy, a rhythm that spoke to a generation just discovering freedom and rebellion through sound. For Clapton, it was life-changing. He later recalled that when he first heard "That'll Be the Day," something inside him shifted. Holly's voice, his songwriting, and the jangling sound of his Fender Stratocaster seemed like a message sent directly to him. "It was as if I suddenly knew what I was supposed to do," Clapton once said. "I wanted to sound like that. I wanted to be that." What makes this story shocking is not just the influence, but the emotional revelation Clapton has recently shared about what Buddy Holly meant to him, and the regret that has haunted him for decades. In a rare interview, Clapton admitted that he once had the opportunity to meet Buddy Holly during Holly's 1958 UK tour. Clapton, still just a young boy, couldn't make the trip to London to see his hero in person. The tickets were sold out, and his parents couldn't afford to take him. That missed moment became something Clapton would never forget. A simple twist of fate that took on tragic meaning when, just months later, Buddy Holly's plane crashed, taking his life at the age of 22. For years, Clapton carried that memory quietly, while he built his own legendary career with Cream, Derek, and the Dominoes. And as a solo artist, a part of him always traced back to Holly. In his autobiography, he even described feeling a strange connection between Holly's music and his own path, as though every note he played was somehow keeping that early spark alive. But in his most recent statement, Clapton went deeper. He revealed that he often wondered how his life might have been different if he had met Holly that night, if hearing him live might have changed his understanding of music, or if perhaps fate would have led him down an entirely different road. The emotional truth, as Clapton put it, is that he's always felt indebted to Buddy Holly. Not just for the music, but for the motivation. "He gave me direction," Clapton said softly. "Without Buddy, there's no me." He made it look possible. Hearing those words from a man who has inspired countless others carries an emotional weight that few could have predicted. Fans were moved by his honesty and by the sadness behind his words. Clapton's revelation isn't just about admiration. It's about how loss can shape a lifetime of art. The crash that took Buddy Holly's life also took away a mentor Clapton never got to meet, a what-if that's lingered for over 6 decades. And even now, at 79, Clapton admits that hearing Holly's song still brings back tears, not just of nostalgia, but of deep gratitude and sorrow. For many, this revelation redefines how we see Clapton's career. Beneath the fame, the albums, and the world tours lies a teenager who once stared at a radio, hearing Buddy Holly's voice for the first time and finding his purpose. What Clapton revealed is shocking, not because it's scandalous, but because it's so human. It's the confession of a man who, after a lifetime of success, still looks back to the one who made him believe it was all possible. Eric Clapton's connection to Buddy Holly runs deeper than mere admiration. While many saw Holly as one of the early architects of rock and roll, for Clapton, he represented something more personal, a sense of possibility. At a time when British music was still heavily influenced by American blues and swing, Holly's sound was revolutionary. It was clean, energetic, and full of heart. To young musicians like Clapton, it was proof that ordinary people could make extraordinary music. In interviews over the years, Clapton often spoke about the clarity of Holly's sound, the crispness of the Stratocaster, the simplicity of his chord progressions, and the sincerity of his lyrics. It wasn't just the music, it was the honesty behind it. Clapton confessed that Holly taught him something that stayed with him forever, that great songs don't have to be complicated, they just have to be real. What Buddy did, Clapton once said, was show us that 3 chords and the truth can change everything. But the shocking part of Clapton's recent confession lies in how deeply Holly's death affected him, and how it silently guided many of his own life choices. After the plane crash in February 1959, the young Clapton was devastated. He remembered sitting by the radio, hearing the news that Buddy Holly, Ritchie Valens, and J.P. the Big Bopper Richardson had died. For him, it wasn't just a celebrity tragedy. It felt like the world had suddenly lost its light. It was the first time I understood what loss meant, Clapton revealed. Even though I didn't know him personally, it felt like losing a friend. This sense of loss became one of the defining emotional undercurrents in Clapton's life. Decades later, he would experience profound personal tragedies, the deaths of close friends like Jimi Hendrix and Stevie Ray Vaughan, and the heartbreaking loss of his young son, Connor. And each time, he admitted, that early memory of losing Buddy Holly came back to him. It was as if that first moment of grief had taught him how fragile life, and music, really was. What shocks fans most about Clapton's revelation is how much he internalized Buddy Holly's legacy. In a touching detail, Clapton once purchased one of the first Fender Stratocasters ever sold in England, simply because it was the same model Holly used. That guitar, he later said, became his most prized possession, not because of its sound, but because it felt like a link to the man who had unknowingly set him on his path. Every time I played it, he said, I felt like Buddy was still here in the notes, in the rhythm, in the heartbeat of it all. Clapton even admitted that Buddy Holly's influence shaped his views on songwriting. Holly's ability to craft heartfelt, relatable songs with simple lyrics became a lifelong lesson. Clapton learned that emotional truth mattered more than technical perfection. This philosophy carried through in his own music. Songs like Wonderful Tonight, Tears in Heaven, and Layla, all of which bear the same emotional vulnerability that Holly's music captured decades earlier. Fans who grew up idolizing Clapton were stunned to learn that so much of his style, tone, and even philosophy as a musician originated from Buddy Holly's example. Holly's music may have been simple, but to Clapton, it was sacred, a blueprint for emotional honesty and artistic freedom. In his most heartfelt moments, Clapton confessed that he sometimes wonders what might have happened if Buddy Holly had lived longer. I think he would have changed the world even more, he said. Maybe he would have led the Beatles. Maybe he would have taught us all something new. But even in his short time, he gave me, and all of us, a reason to pick up the guitar. Clapton's recent revelation has left fans emotional because it pulls back the curtain on one of the most legendary musicians of our time, showing not just the virtuoso, but the young boy who once listened in awe to Buddy Holly, and who still, even now, carries his memory like a guiding light. As Eric Clapton continued to open up about his lifelong connection to Buddy Holly, one truth became clear. His respect for Holly was rooted not only in music, but in the values he represented. Holly was, in Clapton's eyes, the embodiment of purity in art, a man who played from the heart, unburdened by fame or ego. In a world where success often comes with compromise, Buddy Holly's short but shining career stood for integrity, and that's what struck Clapton most deeply. Clapton admitted that as his own fame grew, He often found himself reflecting on Holly's simplicity and authenticity. When Clapton was thrust into the chaos of global stardom in the late 1960s with Cream, he felt the pressure of fame creeping in, the drugs, the expectations, the spotlight. In those moments, he would often think of Buddy Holly's quiet confidence and his focus on the music itself. Buddy didn't need to pretend, Clapton said. He didn't chase image or noise. He just let the song speak. That mindset became Clapton's compass through the ups and downs of his own turbulent journey. At the height of his fame, when critics labeled him God for his guitar playing, Clapton revealed that he often felt deeply uncomfortable with the praise. He remembered thinking that Buddy Holly would have never wanted that kind of worship. He just wanted to make music that made people feel good, Clapton said quietly. That's what I've always tried to do too. What makes this revelation shocking is how profoundly Holly influenced not just Clapton's music, but his sense of morality. At one point, Clapton confessed that Buddy Holly's humility was what saved him from being consumed by fame. He said that during some of his darkest years, battling addiction and personal turmoil, he would listen to Holly's records for grounding. The innocence in Holly's voice, the sincerity in his lyrics, reminded him of why he started playing in the first place. Clapton even kept a framed photo of Buddy Holly in his studio, a personal reminder of the man who made him believe that authenticity was more important than perfection. When I look at his face, Clapton said, I see honesty. I see someone who didn't have to fake anything. That's what I wanted to be. It's this raw, emotional connection that adds depth to Clapton's revelation. The two men never met, yet Holly's presence shaped every major stage of Clapton's life. From the formation of Cream to his solo work and collaborations with legends like George Harrison and Jeff Beck, the same simple philosophy guided him. Keep it real, keep it human, keep it heartfelt. Perhaps the most surprising detail Clapton shared was how deeply Holly's story shaped his own fears about mortality. The idea that a young artist, just 22 years old, could be gone in an instant haunted Clapton for years. He often spoke of the fragility of talent, describing how fleeting creative life can be. This awareness became painfully personal after losing several musician friends in tragic circumstances. Clapton admitted that every time another legend passed away, whether it was Hendrix, Vaughan, or even George Harrison, he thought of Buddy Holly first. He was the first reminder that it can all disappear overnight, he said. In many ways, Buddy Holly's spirit became Clapton's moral anchor, a reminder to stay humble and true. It also explains why Clapton, despite his legendary status, often withdrew from the spotlight, preferring a quieter, more introspective life. Fans who once wondered why he avoided the limelight now understand that his choices were inspired by the very man who made him pick up a guitar. This revelation not only shocks fans but also redefines Clapton's entire legacy. Behind the image of the guitar god is a man who still sees himself as a student, learning, evolving, and honoring the lessons of a hero he never met. For Clapton, Buddy Holly was more than a musician. He was a symbol of purity, a ghost of inspiration that continues to echo in every note he plays. As Eric Clapton concludes his revelation about Buddy Holly, the story transforms from a tale of musical influence into one of gratitude, redemption, and timeless connection. After decades in the music industry, after fame, heartbreak, loss, and redemption, Clapton says that everything always circles back to that first spark, the sound of Buddy Holly on the radio, the moment he realized what music could truly mean. In recent years, Clapton has become more reflective, his voice softer, his eyes full of memory. When he speaks about Holly now, it's not just admiration, it's reverence. He was the start of everything for me, Clapton said. Not just music, but purpose. He made me believe that a skinny kid from England could do something meaningful. That humility, even after selling millions of records and shaping rock. History is what makes his confession so moving. In interviews and performances, Clapton has started paying subtle tribute to Holly. During sound checks, he sometimes plays fragments of Peggy Sue, or Everyday, quiet, almost private moments between himself and the man who inspired him. He even admitted that before every major performance, he whispers a small thank you prayer to Holly, a ritual he's kept for years. "It's my way of saying I remember," he shared. But the truth Clapton recently revealed left fans in awe. For years, people assumed that Clapton's emotional depth came from his own experiences, his struggles with addiction, the loss of loved ones, and the pain that birthed songs like Tears in Heaven. Yet Clapton confessed that it was Buddy Holly who first taught him that pain and beauty can coexist in music. "Buddy had this ability to make sadness sound sweet," Clapton said. "He could take loneliness and turn it into melody. That's what I've tried to do all my life." Clapton also revealed that in the early 2000s, he began writing a song dedicated to Buddy Holly, something deeply personal that he never released publicly. He described it as a letter in the form of music, a way to finally say everything he'd wanted to say since that fateful day in 1959. "I wanted to thank him," he said, "for the music, for the dream, for being the reason I ever picked up a guitar." That unreleased piece, according to those close to him, remains one of Clapton's most emotional compositions, a private conversation between two artists separated by time but united by spirit. What makes this story so powerful is the emotional symmetry between them. Holly's life was cut short just as Clapton's was beginning, yet the torch was somehow passed, a silent handoff between generations. Holly gave the world a sound that inspired countless young musicians. Clapton became the vessel that carried that sound into the future. And through him, Holly's influence continued to ripple through decades of music, and from the Beatles and Stones to modern-day artists who may not even realize how much of their craft traces back to that Texas boy with the Stratocaster. In the end, Clapton's shocking truth isn't about scandal or mystery. It's about revelation. It's about understanding that sometimes the greatest mentors are the ones we never meet, the ones whose voices reach us through speakers, lyrics, and memories. Buddy Holly never knew Eric Clapton existed, yet his spirit shaped the man Clapton became, the songs he wrote, the way he played, and even the values he lived by. Today, Clapton carries that legacy with quiet pride. He's no longer chasing fame or recognition. He's playing for something purer. When asked what keeps him going after all these years, his answer was simple. The same thing that started it. The love of the music. "That's what Buddy gave me, and I'll keep playing for him for as long as I can." It's a rare moment of vulnerability from a legend who has seen it all. Through tears, triumph, and timeless melodies, Eric Clapton's revelation about Buddy Holly reminds us all why music matters, because it connects souls across time. And for Clapton, the sound of Buddy Holly's guitar will never fade. It will always echo, a heartbeat that started his story, and one that will play on long after the final chord.